serious. What scene from a movie, show or video game never fails to make your eyes tear up, no matter how many times you've watched it? Attention, serious. Tag notice, jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted in any comment, parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit if you have any questions or concerns. To this day I sob like the biggest baby when I hear that song. 10 years ago at my aunt's funeral, I was keeping it together for my little cousins who just lost their mom. They had this slideshow pictures of her when she was healthy and it had all of her favorite music. Everyone was a wreck but I kept my jaw clenched and my arms around the kids. Then that fucking song came on. The modified fire hoses behind my eyes that I didn't know were there shot off with enough force to strip chrome off a car bumper. I couldn't catch my breath for 30 minutes. I've never actually cried enough for my tears to hit my shirt before until that day. Fuck Dumbo. I'm tired, boss. Tired of being on the road, lonely as sparrow in the rain. I'm tired of never having a buddy to be with, to tell me where he's going to, coming from or why. Mostly, I'm tired of people being ugly to each other. I'm tired of all the pain I feel and hear in the world every day. There's too much of it. It's like pieces of glass in my head, all the time. Can you understand? I had a grandma with Alzheimer's. I loved her so much. It was quite funny to my family when she forgot things, but it kept getting worse. She died last year, from COVID, but I'm happy she did. If she had died from the Alzheimer's it would have been way more heartbreaking. But that scene from Coco, damn, it gets me every time. My grandma would sing childish songs and say random Spanish. I doubt she knew what it meant. I remember watching this when I was younger. That line hit me as something incredibly badass with some level of sentimental weight behind it, but I never found it sad. I remember thinking of it as a righteous vengeance. Then my own father died a few years later, and a few years after that I rewatched it because it had been a while. I didn't remember much beyond Andre, you killed my father, prepare to die, and the rat monster. Needless to say, that line felt a lot heavier. And she collapsed thinking only one of her sons had died. God knows her reaction when she's told she lost 3 of them. I've been in the army for almost 20 years, and you could gather every soldier who ever served in a room and ask them what the worst job in the military is and the consensus would be casualty notification officer. It is also considered one of the most honorable duties, as is casualty escort. No one wants to do it, but when asked there is no refusing it, nor any thought of refusing it. That's your brother or sister. To be the one who brings them home is the highest honor. This one and the Grey Haven scene, every single time. I have watched the trilogy probably 15-20 times all the way through in my life. Neither of those scenes are particularly sad, but the weight of them and immense sense of loyalty and friendship that has been bubbling throughout the story reaches a peak at those spots. It also doesn't help watching the Grey Havens scene knowing that they had to film that scene several times, and all the actors said they barely had to get into character because everyone was already crying from the knowledge that filming was almost over. Side note, in the books, I always cry at the end when Sam is with his daughter Eleanor and everything is just normal. You've spent how long reading all kinds of adventures, gaining and loving friends, and at the end you know that Sam now has a normal life and he has to grieve through it, and at the same time you have to close the book and go back to reality. Battle of Amonhen for me. Baramir's last stand is just wholesome, from the moment the horn of Gondor blows to Legolas' acknowledgement of it to Aragorn realizing Baramir's in trouble and the fighting rock high theme kicks in and Aragorn charges down the hill as the camera does a long shot of 8 million rocks, give or take, heading towards Baramir's position. 2 scenes from Grave of the Fireflies. When Seda comes out of the hospital where his mom just died and tells Setsuko that their mom is in a different hospital, Setsuko starts to cry, saying that she wants to see her mom, and Seda, completely devastated by their mother's death himself, tries to cheer her up by doing flips on a high bar. Setsuko, continuously crying, doesn't even turn around to watch him, and Seda just does one flip after another like a madman, not stopping even though he knows Setsuko won't watch, cause he doesn't know what else to do. Right before Setsuko dies, when she offers stones to Seda, hallucinating they are rice balls, Seda just looks at her in total shock, and Setsuko asks if he doesn't want them. Then Seda tears up, realizing how bad her condition is. Alright, this thread is making me realize just how much I cry in movies, but Grave of the Fireflies has a special, horrible place in my heart, because I decided to watch it with a group of friends from university while we were all still kind of getting to know each other. We were in a really small department, so the people that got together for a movie night were from all years. Some kids had only been in their undergrad for a couple months and were in the everyone in an intimidating upperclassman stage. I was in 3rd year. There were some alumni who were very respectable. One of our lab instructors even came. We were supposed to watch Totoro, naturally, as that was the premiere pairing with Grave of the Fireflies. No one had seen either movie, but we knew God was sad and Totoro was happy, so we watched the sad one first. Let me tell you, I have never been in a situation of watching a movie and trying not to sniffle, and then looking around the room and seeing everyone else silently bawling. We all sat stoically until Setsuko's death, until the lab instructor let out a sniffle and literally everybody simultaneously started audibly crying. We then huddled into a ball, first years, alumni, lab instructor and all, and wept the entire time. We finished the movie, and then decided we deserved Totoro after that trauma. We were literally in the middle of putting the DVD in the slot when the power went out. We tried to wait it out, find it online, everything, until we all just went home with the pit in our stomachs. I have played Detroit Become Human I don't know how many times, but one of the characters is a maid, caregiver android named Kara. She flees her human abuser along with his daughter, Alice. Their adventure is about them trying to get to safety, and particularly Canada. You can get the perfect ending for them. You can also have a series of heartbreaking endings. In one ending, they attempt to take a boat over the river to get to Canada. They are spied by the Coast Guard and attacked. Depending on what you do, it is possible for Kara to be mortally wounded along with Alice. They reach the shore, Kara holding Alice, and Kara exclaims they made it. They're free in Canada, only to look down and realize Alice had died in the water. She sobs, "I love you, Alice," and shuts down right there. It gets me every time. One of the first things Jesse does is ask the kid if he's hungry, knowing he's probably not even fed daily, then digs through the empty kitchen to get enough ingredients for barely a small sandwich. Seeing a character like Jesse, who is constantly viewed by others as a lowlife, meth-head criminal, immediately shift his focus away from the dire situation at hand, the ATM machine deal, to a child that can /won't even speak, just because he appears neglected and probably not used to being genuinely cared to, I think says more about Jesse and the depth of his character than any other one seen in the series, and just thinking about him saying the "Are you hungry" line makes me tear up every time. One of my favorite fictional characters of all time, from anything. That episode was important for Jesse's character development. Jesse sees the true impact of cooking and selling meth while revealing his softer side to the audience. Mr. White starts to slowly get revealed as the person corrupting Jesse and not the other way around. One of the best things Breaking Bad does is gradual and organic character growth that moves in sync with major plot threads. The writers' strike probably saved this show because it forced them to save interesting ideas for later seasons, like the early more brutal version of Gus and Jesse being imprisoned by an antagonist protagonist. Development is crucial to execution. Mike is another good example because they originally wanted Saul to come over and clean Jesse's apartment after Jane said. Too many shows rush ideas and they don't have the same impact. Hank's character arc is the best example because he is two-dimensional in the first season, and after his encounter with Tucker in season 2 starts to become of a complex character. The end of both Apollo 13 and The Martian when they're safe and everyone is cheering gets me every damn time. Band of Brothers Episode 9. Why We Fight. When they find the comp at Landsberg, different times get me each time I watch it, but I've watched dozens of times and have never made it through that episode without tearing up. Mass H. Abyssinia Henry when Radar reads the telegram about Henry's plane going down. That scene where Fry's dog waits for him literally forever. I honestly won't even watch that episode anymore. Also, the episode in Criminal Minds when the Reaper gets Haley. I've rewatched the show about a dozen times and I will still cry ugly, hysterical tears through the entire episode. I think it's the mom part of me, knowing exactly what that character is thinking while she waits to die. The ending scene of Time's Arrow. BoJack Horseman S4E11. When Bojack's mom asks where she is, and Bojack describes Michigan and the lake house, and how they're eating vanilla ice cream. After how much he resents and totally hates his mother, he decides to do something actually nice. His mother is confused and scared and he reassures her. That entire episode is a kick in the guy. Breaks me right in half just typing this out. The best detail of that scene for me is her slight hesitation when he asks if she can taste the ice cream. As a kid she was never given ice cream. She doesn't know what it tastes like, and you can see that she's actually aware of what Bojack's trying to do. Rather than belittling or insulting him for not knowing that, or taking a chance to make a jab at him, she knows that this is their last real moment together and she chooses to answer in a way that comforts him and gives herself a peaceful and happy moment with him. The fact that in their final moments as a mother and son they both attempt to comfort the other is both touching and unbelievably heartbreaking. Now, I can't promise you that I will bring you all home alive, but I swear to you now, when we ride into battle, that I will be the first man to step foot on the field, and the last man to step off of it, and I will leave no one behind, dead or alive. We will all come home together. Cole, Hal Moore, we were soldiers. That sort of loyalty to one's man is heartwarming. I always need a tissue during that speech. Whole film is a gut-wrencher. Because McGregor is just fantastic. The tone before their duel is coming from the viewpoint of a father figure taking a hardline stance against his son, because even after all the terrible shit he's done he still hasn't given up on him. But then Anne is laid out and burning alive, and Obi-Wan finally has to come to terms with the fact that he failed as a father and he can't fix it. He's just defeated. I went into Rogue One thinking weird thing to make a prequel of. We already know from A New Hope's dialogue that this ends badly, and now it's easily my favorite Star Wars movie. My biggest complaint about the prequels and sequels are their over-reliance on familiar names with special powers. Rogue One reminds us that normal people made the victories too. There are two films which I cannot watch because my emotions will overwhelm me and I won't be able to stop crying. Is Terms of Endearment. The scene where the daughter is in the hospital dying of cancer and mom is at her side and she nods off then wakes up finding her daughter had passed away while she slept, is a very old film from the 1950s starring Jackie Gleason. It's called Jigget. Gleason plays a mute homeless man trying to care for a little girl. Some of the scenes about what the townspeople put him through and how he tries to care for the little girl I just fall to pieces. Rudy. I may have told this story on Reddit before but just in case, here you go. I'm 10-11 years old. I'm flying to visit my grandparents. To my surprise they have TVs everywhere in the plane. In 94-95 this was not the norm so I was excited about watching a movie. I was flying alone so I was excited that I could pass time by watching a new movie. The movie, Rudy. Yes, I love football and had wanted to see it since it came out a few years earlier. This was best case scenario. Well, at least I thought it was. Towards the end of the movie several scenes get emotional and I couldn't hold back the tears. I'm doing everything I can to hide them because I'm uber embarrassed. I finally work up enough courage to look up and around and I was rather surprised. Not a dry eye on the plane. Grown men were crying uncontrollably. I was still embarrassed but felt better after seeing that the movie got to literally everyone. I still can't watch it around other people because I still cry. Almost 30 years later and having seen the movie several times, I no longer have an excuse. What a great flick. The scene in The Pianist where Spielman plays the piece for the German officer. It's beautiful because he's sharing a gift that he's kept inside of him for years of hiding and suffering, and the German officer finds it in his heart to not only show mercy, but help him survive. Best part is that this happened in real life. I've never seen Doctor Who but I got recommended a clip on YouTube a few years ago and it still makes me tear up every time. When the drive, I guess, takes Vincent van Gogh to modern day and shows him the museum and the guy talks about how amazing he is. Just watching the acting and the portrayal, the pure emotion and happiness on his face is amazing. I've watched it so many times now and it never ceases to choke me up. When Going Mary says sorry in One Piece, I was actively following One Piece when Water 7/NI's lobby started and Oda said in an interview that one of the Straw Hats wasn't going to make it out of the arc. He hit us with Usopp leaving, then Robin's capture, but it ended up being the loss of the ship that he hit us with and it hit as hard as if Usopp or Robin was gone. Funny thing is, this is the movie that made me realize the punk scene is mostly an enormous joke and fashion circle jerk. I was heavily into the punk scene when that movie came out, and holy hell was it ever an accurate portrayal of scenesters and cliques. Most of the people they get involved with end up just sucking throughout the whole film, and heroine Bob was his only real friend. Going with him to visit his messed up dad living in that shed really screwed with me too. Truth be told, my friends showed me that movie because it was the most real punk movie they ever watched, but they only liked it on a surface level and related only to the more screwed up characters in that film. I related mostly to Lillard's character, and after watching that, I ended up slow fading most of that friends group and leaving the scene entirely. The end of Arrival. I won't spoil it for others, but it is such a personal moment for me. She asks a question that is a thought experiment, and people who have never experienced a similar situation to hers think that there is an obvious answer, but the way she unflinchingly and without hesitating answers it the way most people who have actually experienced something like that is super powerful. I asked myself the same question many times and my answer was just as obvious to me as hers was to her. I've never seen a film tackle something like that and produce such a deep answer. NGL. I think the scene near the end when she comes back after running away and her parents all hug and break down was far more impactful for me. That movie came out right before I moved half a country away from my hometown, and I never really got that moment to just be sad because my parents would get angry at me for being upset we were moving. The train scene in the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. Now the train scene got to me because of the music, which is consistently beautiful throughout the trilogy, the context of this scene, and the burning building scene. He knows his powers didn't work but he still risked everything to save some kid he doesn't even know. And he's doing the same thing with his powers in the train scene. The villain has the woman he loves held hostage, and leaves him with a train that has no brakes, and everyone on board is gonna die when it crashes. Instead of going for the villain, he saves this train full of people, not because he knows them, or he expects praise, but because it's the right thing to do. And he tries method after method until he's literally so exhausted he's going to collapse. And then the people grab him and pull him into the train and gently set him down. And he wakes up, realizes his mask is off, and they give it back. And once Taka comes back to fight him, these people all stand against a villain that could literally turn them into meat piles. And Spider-Man stands tall, if not a little groggy, and faces him. Despite his injuries, his exhaustion, and how tough this guy is. Peter Parker stands tall and faces him, because he is motherfucking Spider-Man. The 12th Doctor, from Doctor Who, when he escapes the confession dial by punching his way out through meters of a material 400 harder than diamond, spending down there 4.5 billion years. It's simply the most epic moment in the show. The writing, the acting, the music, it peaked so hard. Peter Capaldi monologued for 50 minutes and it was orgasmic, and Murray Gold went hard as fuck with the music. Doctor Who is silly, sometimes stupid and all, but Heaven Sent stands out as a fantastic moment of television in about every way. And then there are also his two speeches about war and kindness in the Zygon inversion and the Doctor Falls.